What is everybody? Welcome to Truth and Transparency. Make yourself known. God, what a horrible game. If you don't know what I'm referring to, the Super Bowl just happened. So if you guys catch us on replay or like a year from now, it is Sunday night, live Sunday night. What you guys are also looking at here, because I'm going to jump right in it. Again, I put 9:45 out there, guys. Sorry, I meant like it was going to be live after the game. So I pegged it at 9:45, but probably would have been a lot longer if the Chiefs would have showed up, but they were still in the locker room. JLR must have been put a spell on them. So boring. So boring. I agree. Worst Super Bowl ever. Yeah. So was that halftime show. Blah. Okay. Take a look at this. We're going to start things off with going through. We got, let's see. This is the refs were actually fair, yes. Now, those of you guys that saw my live, what was it, last night? Gonna kind of pick up from right there. And when I say this is a channel data, this is for the predator prey channel. It is it's the channel that produced the one and only video, and it was this person came out talking about Dylan. All right. So a couple things I want to say. Bethany has kind of like fell off the face of the earth. Like it's like, we're only talking about Dylan and what she saw, heard, all these things all in the PC about Dylan. But if you remember back in the day, it was actually Bethany who the defense was like, we're subpoenaing her and she's coming and she's going to be testifying, whether she likes it or not, but she's going to be testifying for us. Us meaning the defense. Because what Bethany knows is exculpatory to Mr. Kohlberger. That's how they were taking it. And I want to tell you what I think that was. I believe that there is a high probability that Dylan, at some point, when she came home that night on Saturday, that she went to her bedroom and that she went to sleep. Then she woke up when everybody else came home around that 1:45 to 2 o'clock time frame. Okay. And it would be at this time, would be the first, her waking up for the first time. Then I think there's a high probability that if she came out of her room telling people to be quiet, all right, it could have been at that time where she would have seen, Ethan's friend or Xana's friends, or also hearing Kaylee possibly going up and down the stairs during that time. And then possibly seeing then somebody walk out the door. But could it also be at that time that Dylan said, fuck all this, I'm going downstairs and sleeping in Bethany's room with Bethany, or if she's not there yet, I'm going down there because I'm not listening to all this shit. That makes pretty, decent sense to me that, hey, I'm going to go down there. Why it makes even more sense to me is because then Bethany would actually have this quote unquote exculpatory evidence, which is if she said, well, yeah, Dylan slept downstairs with me. Okay. Or when I came home, Dylan was in my room. Or when I came home in the morning, Dylan, was in my room. So those statements would be exculpatory because Dylan can't possibly wouldn't have seen anybody. So just keep that in your back pocket. Because what would Bethany possess that would be deemed exculpatory for Mr. Koberger? Well, it's all about the time of the crime. And it's all about making Dylan not an eyewitness because of what Bethany would say. Now, this would also go with the PCA when it says Dylan originally went to sleep upstairs, in her room. When they use that word originally, she originally, like, what? Like, just so out of place, right? Well, just like their whole freaking probable cause affidavit's out of place. But they went ahead and said these little things. Whatever. Now, Brian is arrested. They go into his house at 1:14 a.m. Okay. And then he is charged at 4 a.m. So 1:14 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, 1:14 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, you have to go back 3 hours for Boise. I'm sorry, 2 hours. It was in, so it would have been 11:14. But in Moscow, it would have been 10:14 p.m. on the 29th. And then he's charged by 4 a.m., which would have been either 1 or 2, depending on if you're in Boise or if you're in Moscow. I know that the families were notified before an arrest was made that they were going to make an arrest. I also have information that came out that the families were told the name. So the reason I'm breaking this all down is because you would have the police department that would know Brian Koberger's name. You would have the victims. When I say the victims, the surviving roommates, their families, whoever that the surviving roommates told, the victims' families and whoever they told. But those are the only people that should have known the name Brian Koberger and that he was going to be arrested. Well, Lana, why is this important? Well, because the predator or prey account, it was opened on YouTube at let's see. We're going to talk all about this. It made a custom URL, and it was at Predator, and it used the OR prey altogether. And it then did a... So here, let me go back down. This equates to, if it's in Boise, okay, it would have been 12:54 a.m. and 44 seconds if you're in Boise. Okay. Now, and if you're in Moscow, it would have been p.m. Because you have to, you take this and you're going to convert it. So. All right. SWAT goes in at 1:14 a.m., which would have been 11:14 p.m. if you're in Boise, 10:14 p.m. if you are in Moscow. Okay. At 12:54 and 44 seconds for Boise. So let's see. An hour and 40 minutes after they would have went in to the house, somebody creates this account. And when you create your account, this becomes really interesting. We've seen it when someone said in one of the chats, they said, "Oh, he's long gone. He's in the Poconos." You guys remember that? The person's long gone. They're in the Poconos. So there's your first reference to the Poconos. Then we come to find out Brian's really the person they're about to arrest is really in Pennsylvania, and his family is like right around the Poconos. Then this account here, miraculously, it says it was created, and you could put any zip code down though, as far as I know, to be able to do this. So you could put, I could say that I'm creating it in fucking, I don't know, Fort Lauderdale. It's a matter of if I can, after I create it, my IP address though would know where I was when I truly create it. So there would be a way to like figure that out. Anyways, just breaking this all down, that this person, super strange that why anybody would want you to think that you're creating this in the Poconos. And when I'm talking about this account, this is the account that put out about Dylan, about that. This is where it gets a little interesting. Okay. The video that was done to talk about Dylan for the 15 minutes that the video was made, it was a premiere. And what a premiere means is that I can go on my account right now and I could set up to have a premiere, and I would pick whatever day and time. Okay. And then it would be like I was live, but I'm not. It's a premiere, but it's a scheduled show. And the metadata suggests that this account went live for 1 hour and 40 minutes after the arrest, but yet 1 hour and 6 minutes before Culver was formally charged with the crimes. That's what the metadata suggests. But there is no, so I'm going to show you guys when you pull up this account. If you go to Predator or Prey. All right, so when you look at 642 subscribers, but when you go to look at the actual, so premiered January 13th, 2023. See, premiered. Okay. Now, when you go to the actual channel, see it says home and videos. That's the only one. All right. I'll learn more about this channel. This channel now, I want you to take a look. This channel has 52,144 views total. All right. One video. 642 subscribers. And now I want to show you guys something. Oopsies. Videos, home. Okay, so 52,144.
Okay, so before
52,000. So hang tight. 52,329 views. But $52,144 views. You guys see that? This is the life of the channel. Has 52,144 views. That'd mean like any. So if I was to show you guys mine, it would show you, I don't know, 15 million. Okay. But please pay attention to this. This number, this total number should be more. Okay. It needs to be more than the video. Okay. Watch this. Ready? So now when I go back to, so 52,144 views. That's just the channel. This is the channel as a combined 52,144 views. But when you go and you
so before we dive into what I'm referring to about the Feds screwing or attempting to screw Dylan,
52,329 views. This channel is fucked up. Okay. Your total views has to be more. So the total views on the channel should be 52,329. Okay. For the channel to only have, for the channel to have less views than this video has, something isn't right. Something is wrong. Something is hella wrong. Okay. Let me, you guys see the math there? This video alone, so views, 52,329. All right. Then when you actually look at the channel as a whole, it should have at least this, if not more. Right. Now, this said that it premiered on January 13th, 2023. The metadata suggests that this channel went live basically during the time of him being arrested, okay, or detained to then being charged. All right, so detained / arrested to then being charged with the murders. That's when the metadata suggested that this channel went live. But I want you guys to see that if they went live, this channel deleted that live. But more importantly, I don't know if anybody, because when you're just, first of all, in order for you to go live, you can't go live without, you have to meet the requirements to be able to go live. There's rules in YouTube. You can go live from a laptop. There's just rules. Okay. You have to make so many hours and watch hours and blah, blah, blah. All right. So, but what's just interesting about this whole thing for me, at least, is that, all right, we're going to play this again so you guys can hear the video if you guys didn't see last night. But was something that was just really, really interesting to me is that this number is 52,329. And that number should be matching. At the very least, it has to be, when you talk about this channel as a whole, 52,144 views. That's impossible. They're missing a shit ton of, where are the views? Your views don't go away if you take down a video. So it's
okay. So
something's off.
But
here we go. Listen to the video.
Dive into what I'm referring to about the Feds screwing or attempting to screw Dylan.
Oh, and by the way, like I want to read what it says here. The video. It says the facts in this video has received prior permission from Dylan Mortensen to be shared with the masses. There's plenty of other details and information she has allowed me to release, but this was the most important fact that she wanted to clear up first. There's 4 shocking details she has been specifically instructed by the prosecutor that she cannot release. Hopefully this helps clear a lot of speculation going around YouTube, etc. Okay.
And give you a brief background as to who I am. So my girlfriend is in Dylan's inner circle. And by inner circle, I mean inner circle. Like they've hung out almost every day since the incident occurred. And I've seen her a plethora of times as well. So you're going to notice I'm not going to use words like allegedly, supposedly, because all of this is actual firsthand factual information. Where should I start to clear things up? First of all, there's a lot of misconception about Dylan suffering from PTSD or trauma or any of that. None of that is accurate. In fact, when we try to console Dylan after the incident, she's the one that was laughing at me and my girlfriend and I, talking about we're so weird, when we tried to give her a hug and stuff. So she's still the same old Dylan. She's had a rough life growing up. She's been through a lot. She doesn't have PTSD and didn't suffer any trauma. The incident that night, and what I'm referring to with the feds actually put a lot of words into her mouth that she didn't say herself first. So there's a lot of leading statements that they were insinuating to her. And she was really scared the first few days, obviously, after the incident occurred. So like the reason none of it makes sense in the affidavit is because it didn't really happen that way. So she never stood there shocked when she saw the individual. She was just standing in a doorway, like anybody who opens the door. It was just, she opened the door and yelled at Ethan and Xana and who she thought was their friend. She yelled at them to be quiet. That's what was going on with that situation. And she just went back into her room. She locked the door like usual and, went to sleep. Everything was quiet after she yelled at them. So she didn't think anything of it. For everyone who's creating these random stories about her being shocked or traumatized, she didn't realize anything was going on. And it might sound crazy, it might sound dumb, but she really had no clue anything was going on. They're being a little loud, so she yelled at them to be quiet. And that's it. She locked her door and she just went back to her room. And she didn't want to be nosy or anything. So, she was kind of new to that house, so she didn't want to be nosy and, get up all up in their business, especially at, in the middle of the night or early morning. So it's as simple as that. Everyone trying to blow that whole situation into something that's not. So yeah, that's that. And she didn't actually get a real good look at Brian. At the time, she assumed it was one of Xana and Ethan's friend who was just getting ready to leave, who was walking out. She didn't get that good of a look. The feds were really aggressive with Dylan the first few days, which is why she hired the attorney to begin with, because of the treatment of her during the interview, more like an interrogation, to be honest. So that's why she got an attorney, because the way they were talking to her and, they didn't really understand or believe why she's the only one alive when you kind of skip rooms to get to the other 2 rooms. So she didn't really like the feel of how the interrogators or the feds were talking to her. And within like a few days after the incident, they approached her with pictures of Brian. It was like, is this the guy? Do you think this is the guy? This is definitely him, right? And they were almost leading her to believe this has to be the person. And she wasn't really sure, but they kind of put the...
Okay. Right there. This would be suggestive that Dylan Mortensen was provided pictures of Brian Koberger either on 11/17 or 12/1. Both of those dates are before the Moscow Police Department ever said that they had the name Brian Koberger. But the feds, it's a different story. Just so we're clear, you can be a confidential informant for the feds, and that's totally something different. And you could be a confidential informant for, local PD, state police, totally different. But come to find out, during the suppression hearings, Dylan was shown pictures. And if Dylan was shown pictures by the feds a couple days after this homicide, 4 homicides, there's a big problem, a huge problem. I don't know why everyone cares about finding out who the person is. Okay, it's about the information, you guys. I promise you it's not it's not drunk turkey, okay? It is not drunk turkey. So if that's what you're here to try to figure that out, I'm going to explain to you who doesn't matter, okay? This was put out. This channel was made literally during the time that nobody knew that Bryan Kohberger was going to be arrested in Pennsylvania. This channel was created during that time. Y'all understand? That's what you need to focus on. This channel was created literally during the time frame of the doors being busted in and him being arrested. Like, we're going into the house. Okay. Then they didn't make the formal arrest and charge him with the crimes until 4 o'clock in the morning, right? That time frame of 1:14 until 4 a.m. So December 30th, during the time frame of that happening, somebody creates an account, this account, that would then put out this video. And this account put down Mount Pocono, Pennsylvania. Now, it is very important to listen to this. The only people that knew the name Bryan Kohberger, okay, are Dylan, Bethany, and the 4 victims' families who were notified of this. They were notified before they took him, okay? There are a couple of people on the internet that also knew about it because of where they happened to be when this news more or less broke to family. They kind of got news of it before the rest of the world. All right. So there was a very small group of people that only knew about this. Okay. So what are the odds that somebody decides to start a YouTube channel? Who would know? Let's start a YouTube channel. During the time frame of this going down, you got the police that would know. You got, like I said, the families, surviving roommates, then whoever they would have told. That's it. But they also knew, I mean, Mount Pocono, Pennsylvania. What? And then, again, they do a premiere on January 13th with this video to talk about, hey, people, I don't care what we thought back when this first got released, doesn't matter. Coming back to it now and wanting to look at the date that it was created, the time that it was created, and then what they're telling us. And what they're telling us is that Dylan, all right, ask yourselves if this makes sense. Well, Dylan was showed pictures, wasn't she? She sure was. Dylan didn't recognize the guy. She sure didn't, right? But what's interesting is when Dylan was shown the pictures of the guy.
Those words in her mouth, it's almost like, you know, they were insinuating it so much to where she was like, yeah, I think, yeah, no, it's definitely him. And that's when they just kind of like ran with it. So what you're seeing in the affidavit is, it didn't play out that way. So Dylan's attorney and her, and actually all of us, are pretty upset at how they threw her under the bus in the affidavit.
So Dylan is saying after she got to read the affidavit, because remember, she didn't read it. She didn't know what the hell was going to be in there. After she read it, she was like, what the hell? They're making it seem like that I like ID'd this man. I didn't ID anybody. Okay. Which that's accurate. She didn't ID anybody, right? And those aren't her statements. This is what this person is saying. Now, all this time forward, all right, we now know after the suppression hearings to this point that this is a bunch of fucking crazy ass fuckerage. But this channel being created when it was, that's pretty fuckerage. And to have this one video here.
When's the last time you've seen a witness or like a snitch in a case, their actual names being mentioned? You know, the fact that they didn't redact it. We all think that the feds and prosecutors threw her name in there purposely to apply more pressure because Dylan was really wishy-washy during the interrogation, and with them, you know, putting these words.
Dylan was really wishy-washy during. I mean, this is all accurate. Who fucking put this out there? This is not accurate. This is accurate. She was wishy-washy, and Taylor comes out and tells us. Now, I went and did some digging on people that have either wrote a book about this case, made a documentary about this case. So I went and started researching anybody who's done, you know, something on a, you know, decently large scale. And in the first couple pages of the While Idaho Slept, okay, remember like while Idaho slept thing? In the first couple pages, the author references like hunting, predator prey, like hunting, and uses the lingo of the name of this channel. Thought that was interesting. It's While Idaho Slept or something. Anyway, so much so that I ordered the hard book cover copy of it. It'll be here tomorrow because I want to take another gander at something.
You know, set in stone on paper. It kind of puts a lot of pressure on her now because everyone views her as like some star witness, the star of the case. So that's what we all believe, that she kind of is getting screwed over by, you know, the feds and the prosecutor, you know, because now she has to testify and she has to say kind of what, you know, what words they put in her mouth instead of what she actually believed, you know, and what she actually knows happened, you know, like with her own words, not words that were like shoved in her mouth, you know. So yeah, her attorney is pretty upset. She's pretty upset, but at the same time, she knows that, you know, she can be a huge help in this case. So it's not like she's identifying somebody she didn't see. It just didn't play out necessarily like, oh, bushy eyebrows. She saw bushy eyebrows, you know, and was able to 100% identify him, you know. It's just initially when, you know, detectives and feds came in and took over the scene had been contaminated so badly by the local authorities. When they first came, first responders, they stomped all over the place, contaminated the scene. You know, all the, you know, other people that were at the house, they were, you know, walking up and down the steps, you know, to make sure what they're seeing is what they're really seeing. So, I mean, this is a scene that was really badly contaminated. So to equal the playing field, the feds feel like, you know, having a star witness is you know, is critical here. But just the way she was being interrogated initially was, it's kind of crazy. It's not what you guys think. They weren't being all sensitive and gentle to her. They were really accusatory and kind of, you know, pressured, you know, put the press on her. Thought that she might have something to do with it because it just didn't make sense to them why she's the only one alive. And on top of that, didn't see anything or really hear anything. You know, she didn't want to be nosy, didn't want to, you know, get up in her roommate's business. She told him to be quiet. You know, I mean, the last thing that crossed her mind was people are getting slaughtered next door and upstairs, you know. So I think that's pretty much everything I've covered. So yeah, just to go over the whole, you know, suffering trauma. She was shocked that she saw him walk past her. Like, it's not as dramatic as you guys think. Like, he was already halfway towards the kitchen and walking out. And for all of y'all that are scratching your heads, yes, police do lie.
Yes, police do lie. I mean, you guys, this is fucking serious. This is somebody calling it out. Okay. January 13th in a premiere video on a channel that was created during the time frame of them going and breaking into like knocking down SWAT style to Koberger's family's house and doing all that jazz. Now, did we get to the part yet where we heard that large dog barking? We get to that part yet?
Kind of thrown everybody around the ringer through this whole case from the very start. And you have to think about it. Why would a survivor, a victim, have to hire an attorney? Obviously, they were mistreating her pretty badly as they're interrogating her, and especially now throwing her name in the affidavit like that. That's all because they're pretty upset she hired an attorney to begin with, and because they want to put a lot of pressure on her from the public for her to be the star witness. But aside from that, she's doing good. She's the same old Dylan. And the interview, more like an interrogation, to be honest. So that's why she got an attorney, because the way they were talking to her, and they didn't really understand or believe why she's the only one alive when you kind of skip rooms to get to the other two rooms. So she didn't really like the feel of how the interrogators or the feds were talking to her. And within like a few days after the incident, they approached her with pictures of Brian. It's like, is this the guy? Do you think this is the guy? This is definitely him, right? And they were almost leading her to believe this has to be the person.
Now, there was a YouTube subpoena that was done. I thought that was interesting. But if this man is accurate about when Dylan was shown these fucking pictures, IGG didn't bring them to Brian Koberger if it was on 11/17. Because the STR wasn't even back yet. Now, if they're mixing up a couple days to a couple weeks, okay, then that means it was either Dylan Mortensen was either shown pictures of Brian on 11/17 by the feds, or 12/1. Is right after WSU found Brian's car. And then 11/17 is right before they went and started looking at surveillance cameras on 11/18 for following the white car around. Again, Ashley Jennings used in the hearing, it was the reply, so it was the objection to the defendant's motion. Defense had, I don't even know how many freaking exhibits they had, but Ashley Jennings had 5. And the 2 that she's relying on are 11/17 and 12/1. Now, I want to back up. I mean, Anne needs to find out who the hell posted this video.
Because of the treatment of her during, and then Ethan's friend, who was just getting ready to leave, who was walking out, she didn't get that good of a look. The feds were really aggressive with Dylan the first few days, which is why she hired the attorney to begin with, because of the treatment of her during the interview, more like an interrogation, to be honest. So that's why she got an attorney, because the way they were talking to her, and they didn't really understand or believe why she's the only one alive when you kind of skip rooms to get to the other two rooms. So she didn't really like the feel of how the interrogators or the feds were talking to her. And within like a few days after the incident, they approached her with pictures of Brian. I was like, is this the guy? Do you think this is the guy? This is definitely him, right? And they were almost leading her to believe this has to be the person. And she wasn't really sure, but they kind of put those words in her mouth. It's almost like, they were insinuating it so much to where she was like, yeah, I think, yeah, no, it's definitely him. And that's when they just kind of like ran with it. So what you see in the affidavit is it didn't play out that way. So Dylan's attorney and her, and actually all of us, are pretty upset at how they threw her under the bus in the affidavit. When's the last time you've seen a witness or like a snitch in a case, their actual names being mentioned? The fact that they didn't redact it. We all think that the feds and prosecutors threw her name in there purposely to apply more pressure, because Dylan was really wishy-washy during the interrogation, and with them, putting these words, set in stone on paper, it kind of puts a lot of pressure on her now, because everyone views her as like some star witness, the star of the case. So that's what we all believe, that she kind of is getting screwed over by the feds and the prosecutor, because now she has to testify and she has to say kind of what words they put in her mouth instead of what she actually believed, and what she actually knows happened, like
What she actually knows happened. What does she actually know that happened? Anyways, so let's talk about one other thing here. Bethany. There's only one thing that makes sense. Bethany's bedroom's downstairs. It was originally told to everybody that the two surviving roommates were all the way downstairs. It's because that's what it came out at first. Because Bethany and Dylan were downstairs when they woke up. And then if you actually listen to Lanier, he's like, when we re-interview people after we've already interviewed them, because we've gotten more information, then we take it to them and then we see if they can connect pieces, hey, yada, 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 yada. I will say this, that I know for a fact that this video could not have been recorded unless it was police before January 3rd, 2023, because it had to be when the affidavit came out so that everybody knew about it, unless you are law enforcement and you knew about the whole fucking thing. Did anybody read the book, The Night That Idaho Slept, or whatever it's called. Has anybody read that? Holly, you did? Okay. How did you read it? Did you read it via like audiobook? How did you indulge in yours? The reason I'm asking if anybody has read the book and has the book is because I want to check a couple pages. Otherwise, I have to wait till mine gets here tomorrow. It's free on YouTube. Listen to what I'm saying. Hold on. So if anybody was following this case from the beginning, before there was a gag order, people were able to do interviews before there was a gag order. All right. But I personally believe that law enforcement was leaking stuff to the media even after the gag order. I believe that people were fucking around with even leaking stuff from like the jail in Latah County out there. But Colleen, can you email it to me? If you could email it to me, that'd be great. I want to take a look at something. I want to show you guys something. Please teleport us to free audiobook. We're going to go to sleep to this. I just want to show you a couple pages. Oh, yeah. Send that to me if you have that. Again, what's crazy about this, and I don't think you can look the other way, is the date that this was made, this channel was made, and it was during, here, I'm going to put this back up. Oh, yes, I have the whole thing copied, Lana. Yeah, send it on over. Okay, so hold on. Share screen. Let's see. I think I got something sent to me here. Let's take a look. Oh, maybe it wasn't that. Again, good evening. Good evening. The Night That Idaho Slept. Yes, The Night That Idaho Slept. So does anybody have it? The Night That Idaho Slept. It's by Reuben Appleton. J. Reuben Appleton. Anybody? Appleton? Well, I was wondering if you would take my phone call. Do you think that if I was to call Reuben Appleton, do you think he would take my call? I just have a quick question for him. Oh, you just emailed it to me? Oh, okay. Let me check out my email. That's interesting. I'm not getting any emails. When you say you just emailed it, like as in like just? Oh, as in like I just got it. Okay, let's see. Is he going to have to speak to us? Let's see. Here we go.
This is Audible.
Seriously.
Harper Paperbacks and Harper Audio present While Idaho Slept, The Hunt for Answers in the Murders of 4 College Students
The Hunt for Answers.
by J. Reuben Appelman. Read by Gary Bennett. Prologue. Pine Village. There are drug-related crimes, like everywhere else, but not terribly newsworthy ones. Crimes of petty theft, shoplifting, and of course domestic assaults, which are violent but statistically stem from addiction and poverty. America's crimes of the broken heart and soul. In mid-November 2022, just weeks before Moscow would be hunkered down for one of its notorious North Idaho winters, the 37-member Moscow Police Department had its first murder case in 7 years, a quadruple homicide. 4 University of Idaho students had been stabbed to death overnight in an off-campus house, squatting against a hillside cluster of equally collegiate multi-tenant units. According to the Moscow police, it was around 4 a.m. when a then unknown subject, or unsub in police terminology, entered this co-ed residence under the cloak of darkness, just yards from the college campus. Chapter 6. Security cameras and cell tower data told a story, but they didn't reveal who was behind the Elantra's steering wheel or how events unspooled inside 1122 King Road. Less than 2 months later, police would identify and arrest the man they believed to have been their unsub. From the facts alleged in the affidavit supporting his arrest, an account of the early morning hours of November 13th emerges. The narrative conveyed in this chapter on the commission of the King Road homicides is a reasonable reconstruction of events that I have based on documents submitted by law enforcement agencies. Those documents identify in detail cell phone data, neighborhood security camera footage in audio and video format, traffic cameras, license plate readers, and other forensic data. Further nuances were based on my personal visits to the crime scene residence and its environs on multiple occasions in the days after the murders, as well as on personal travel along the unsub's alleged route in the early morning hours after the crimes. The Elantra idled atop the concrete outside 1122 King Road. It was cold outside, and the engine exhaust would have been discharging in plumes. The street was often heavily trafficked during mid-evening hours, but began to quiet after 2 a.m., bar closing time, and then 30 or 40 minutes of people getting home safely in Ubers and lifts, or drunkenly hugging the shoulder of the road in their trucks. There were kitchen lights that stayed on while people grabbed late-night snacks, then clicked off when they went to sleep. By 3:30 a.m., the neighborhood was reliably still. As seen on security video, the Elantra had already made 3 passes by the residents earlier that night, entering King Road at a snail's pace in the dark. It had turned around in the cramped corner near King and Queen each time, at the Queen Apartments overlooking 1122, before eventually making an awkward 3-point turn in order to exit the area. After the 3rd pass and exit, the driver had reportedly taken Taylor Road away from Greek Row, maybe killing time. Finally, he'd turned and come back. In front of the house, the vehicle's unusually narrow taillights would have glowed like blood-red cat's eyes in the night. The driver wasn't leaving the area again, not just yet. He would have driven slowly up the incline past 1122, turned slightly at the Queen Apartments, and followed the asphalt 100 yards to the parking bluff that overlooked the home through the small cluster of woods. Kaylee Consalva's bedroom could be seen on the top floor of the residence, and on the floor beneath it was a sliding glass door that led inside. It was a few minutes after 4 a.m. by the time the unsub shut his vehicle off, then stepped onto the pavement. In the past few months, the unsub's cell phone had utilized the towers serving 1122 King Road at least a dozen times, always in the late hours of the night like this, his vehicle allegedly climbing slowly past the residence on each of those nights, then turning back around in the parking area of the Queen Apartments, preparing for his crimes by surveilling the area, law enforcement had suggested. He'd coast back downhill in the darkness each time, the 3-story King Road house just outside his driver's side window as he passed, the body of his vehicle low to the ground. On the night of the murders, the unsub was dressed all in black, with a covering over his face from the bridge of his nose downward. In the dark, he crossed the concrete and then made his way through the brush toward 1122 King Road's unlocked sliding glass door on the second-floor patio. Built against the hillside, the second floor of the residence was as easily accessible as the first, and even more inviting to outsiders, with its open deck and overhead twinkle lights. The unsub opened the glass slider and stepped into the kitchen. He would have crossed in darkness, then taken a small stairway that wrapped to the 3rd floor, where 2 of the girls had been preparing for sleep. In the old house, according to a previous tenant, the treads and landing of the stairwell would have creaked, but just slightly. By the time the unsub was upstairs, the golden doodle, not much older than a puppy, began to bark. The audio was picked up by a neighboring camera. He barked through the bloodshed and through the sounds of the 2 girls, these best friends since junior high, struggling, but then eventually falling beside each other in the same bed, the gashes in their bodies made by a fixed-blade hunting knife so long it could have a watermelon in one stroke, and so quick as to be impossible to successfully defend against. From downstairs, a female voice yelled up to be quiet. She was trying to sleep, she'd shouted up the winding hallway. Kaylee Consalvas and Madison Mogan leaked blood onto the mattress, where they...
Right there. Okay, perfect. So he adopted right there, Mr. Appleton. He adopted that version right there. That Dylan said to be quiet during that time. I don't believe that. I believe that Dylan would have said to be quiet because Dylan was asleep when everybody came home at like 1:45, 1:56 o'clock that time, because she came home and originally went to bed in her room on the 2nd floor. And then she was awakened around 2 to everybody coming home. And that's what would have been the, be quiet, blah, blah, blah. In my humble opinion.
Where they might have died almost immediately, and the golden doodle shut into another bedroom across the hall, eventually quieted. The unsub went back downstairs, creaking toward the 2nd floor landing and the small hallway out the kitchen that led into the communal living room where the King Road girls had filmed TikTok videos, sometimes drinking, often laughing. They were girls like the ones that other people had gone to prom with, popular girls wearing bright colors, smiling for the cameras of their friends. The unsub would have met Ethan Chapin, 6 feet 4 inches tall, in the doorway of Xana's bedroom. The sharpened...
Now, I personally believe that Ethan was extremely drunk, and I don't think that he ever left that bed. Until after the attack, during the attack, due to the fact that he was ridiculously drunk, laying in bed. like any other college kid would do.
Steel hunting blade in the unsub's right hand was an uneven match for the one-time high school basketball player, athletic as he was, who was likely slain near the doorway's threshold and then shoved inside, the veins of his neck brutally severed. Xana Kernodle, tiny at 5'3" and approximately 112 pounds, put up a fight. Her arms took defensive wounds, but to the unsub, killing Xana was no more difficult than cutting through weeds along a foot trail. As easy as stepping forward. The time was approximately 4:20 a.m. when the unsub got back into his Elantra and sped away from King Road, leaving Moscow entirely. He drove the Elantra south, taking US 95 for a little over half an hour into the darkness that Moscow's industrial environs dumped into. He passed the small community of Blaine, in the remote Palouse farm country. So dark at night it looked like outer space stretching to either side of his headlights. There were gravel roads and ponds and creeks out there, but they were lost to the expanse. Through even more remote country, he traveled slowly, with no moon to see by. In time, he swung back north again through Washington State, on US 195, toward Pullman's Washington State University campus. There was a heavy grade to the road, and wide open steps spanning from the shoulder, and overhead the sky was black as tar. There were homes, but they were sporadically placed amid the rolling farmland that in summer would come alive, but just days ago had become brittle with frost. In the dark, his headlamps jostled over ruts in the road, the way lives are sometimes jostled, by bumpy chance and unforeseeably. On the bed beside Mattie Mogan, he'd left the sheath of his knife. Part 2. Chapter 7. Corporal Brett Payne of the Moscow Police Department was 33 years old and looked like many seasoned military vets from North Idaho, with a fit build and smoothly shaved head. He had served with the Army's 82nd Airborne Division in Afghanistan as a paratrooper, and had been a police officer for only 4 years, just 2 of them with the Moscow Police Department, where he was awarded Rookie of the Year in 2020. While studying at the Peace Officers Standards and Training Academy, POST, Payne was the first officer in regional history to receive 3 awards for excellence. He had proven his aptitude for the job and shown levels of diligence and investigative acumen that stood out to the small rural police force he was set to join. Payne had seen death up close during combat in the Middle East, but had never conducted a domestic homicide investigation in Idaho, let alone been the lead investigator on one. That was about to change. He got the call to King Road at around 4 p.m. on November 13th and arrived at the residence to assist with both securing the location and crime scene processing associated with what he'd been told were 4 brutal homicides. The 4 students, he would later learn, had been murdered a full 12 hours earlier. Payne had been late to the scene, but then so had everybody in the force. The 911 call hadn't been made until noon, 8 hours after the likely times of death of each of the victims. The emergency call reportedly hadn't even been made by either of the 2 surviving roommates, Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, but had been placed on Mortensen's phone by one of their friends, a boy named Hunter Johnson, who was the best friend of one of the victims, 20-year-old Ethan Chapin. None of that made sense right away, and like everybody in the Moscow PD, Payne was scrambling to understand what had happened overnight. By the time he arrived, neighbors from all directions had gathered around the house. Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk had been removed from the immediate area. The Idaho State Police Forensic Services team was already on the scene, and several of Payne's colleagues from the Moscow PD were canvassing for potential witnesses. Officer Corbin Smith, one of the initial responding officers and a young Marine Corps veteran who'd gotten his bachelor's degree at the University of Idaho before becoming a cop, watched Payne through the horrific scene. Payne entered the house through the first-floor threshold off the communal parking lot, while crime scene analysts in their disposable hazmat jumpsuits swabbed the doorframe and windows for DNA and prints. He took a stairwell behind Officer Smith to the second floor. The smell of death was unmistakable and already strong. Although his tenure with the Moscow PD had been relatively brief, he'd already seen more bloodshed in Afghanistan than many in Idaho law enforcement would see in their lifetimes, certainly more than most rural cops had signed up for. Down the second floor hallway to the east side of the house was a small bathroom, adjacent to which was Xana Kernodle's bedroom.
Kate, can I help you?
As Payne approached it, he could see a female body on the floor just inside the door, with wounds that appeared to have come from a large knife or another edged weapon. The body, like most bodies in death, was positioned unnaturally and was later identified by a driver's license and other personal belongings found in the room as Xana Kernodle. Further inside the room was the body of a large male victim, with wounds that the nearby Spokane County medical examiner would refer to in reports as sharp force injuries, likely from the same edged weapon. The male body was identified as Ethan Chapin. The blood in the room, spatter and leakage, was extensive enough that it later appeared to have drained to the exterior of the house. Payne followed Smith upstairs to the third floor of the residence, where the bedrooms of Kaylee Gonsalves and Madison Mogan were across the hall from each other. When responding officers had first arrived a few hours earlier, the Golden Doodle, Murphy, had been found shut inside Kaylee's bedroom on the west side of the third floor, spared by whoever had committed the murders. There had been no blood or other evidence found on Murphy. Officers had taken him from the scene and processed him, then placed him in a temporary protective shelter. He was eventually returned to Jack DeCour, who lived just around the block and had slept through the phone calls from Kaylee and Madison, and through the murders. Kaylee had reportedly been trying to get back together with Jack the previous night, which he would learn when he checked his phone, and now she was dead. Inside Madison Mogan's room at the southeast corner of the third floor, Kaylee and Maddie lay atop Maddie's small bed together, both deceased. The stab wounds that had ended their lives were grotesque. A large pink M for Maddie rested on one of the window ledges, and beside it, against the window glass, was a pair of pink cowgirl boots. Pink-hued roses decorated the wall around the circular vanity mirror, modern, like the kind sold by West Elm. A sleek white vanity and chip. Chapter 8. Chief of Police James Fry had lived in Moscow and its environs for longer than most, although he wasn't born and raised, as people from this small town often proudly declared of themselves. North Idaho was in his blood after 35 years. The 53-year-old with a closely cropped cut and pleasant, sincere demeanor had gone to high school in Council, on the edge of the Wallowa-Whitman National Forest, 3 hours south. The junior and senior highs in Council were combined under one low-hanging roof. There were so few students in the area. Fry was one of just over 100 in grades 7 through 12. The school mascot was a lumberjack with a red stocking cap and double-bladed wood axe over its shoulder. When he moved north to study at the University of Idaho, the whole world got bigger. Fry stayed in Moscow through a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and a master's in curriculum and instruction. He joined the Moscow PD as a reservist in 1993, becoming a full-time officer 2 years later. He'd met his wife, Julie, now the treasury manager of the city of Moscow, at U of I in the early 1990s. They had 4 children together, all of them grown now, but the family bonds still connected them deeply to the landscape and people of North Idaho. Fry had served many roles with the Moscow PD. He'd been a member of the SWAT team, serving high-risk search and arrest warrants and training for active shooter and hostage situations, and he'd put in extra hours instructing new recruits on firearms and taser handling. After just over 20 years, he'd been sworn in as chief in 2016. He was then overseeing the safety of the small town he'd gone to college in, but he was no small town investigator. In fact, shortly after becoming chief, he was invited to train with the FBI in Washington, D.C., at the National Training Academy, which accepts less than 1% of its police applicants. There, Fry had access to courses on intelligence theory, terrorist mindsets, and behavioral and forensic sciences, all taught by the leading and most experienced minds in law enforcement. After 10 weeks with the FBI, Fry had sharpened his investigative acumen, and he had made connections in the bureau that he would soon find the need to call upon. Prior to becoming chief, Fry had been captain of the University of Idaho's campus policing division, so the murders of Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan hit him hard. 4 of his own had been taken. Not only did Fry understand the nuances of his town, and every aspect of its small but competent police unit having risen through the ranks from the very bottom, he understood the collective heart of the U of I student body. Its pulse coursed through every artery of Moscow, and every capillary was filled with the hopes and dreams of its nearly 12,000 students. This case was personal to Fry. Responding officers and Fry's detectives had been first to walk through the scene at 1122 King Road. Not even wearing booties yet, they'd backed off when they saw the extent of the carnage. It had been obvious that command needed to be called. By the time Fry had done his own walkthrough, his investigators were scanning for tire tracks and taking swabs from the windowsills. His photographers were snapping thousands of shots, and media photographers had already started to arrive in a slow trickle outside. Some of his officers were canvassing the neighborhood for security camera footage, and others were knocking on doors looking for potential witnesses. Still others were carefully combing the woods to the rear of the house and rifling through garbage dumpsters in the vicinity, looking for the murder weapon or other physical evidence that may have been shed in the perpetrator's departure. Inside the house, there was blood on the walls, on the floors, and on the mattresses in the bedrooms. The bodies remained where they'd fallen, slain with an obviously large blade, but not tied up or gagged or otherwise restrained. There appeared to be no sign of sexual assault, something the autopsies would later confirm. The first floor of the residence showed signs of recent alcohol use by the students. Red plastic cups for mixed drinks littered the kitchen, along with empty beer bottles and unwashed dishes. A jack-in-the-box bag sat on the counter. The King Road house had been known by policing authorities to be a party house, but it wasn't just the current tenants who'd built its reputation. The 6-bedroom home so close to campus had been a partying hub for years. There was a well-traveled path to a glass slider off the second-floor entry, and a keypad on the front door that Kaylee Gonsalves's sister, Olivia, had told police the students often gave out the code to. So while there was no sign of forced entry, that fact had little weight. The killer could have been a previous visitor to the house, a partygoer who knew, even tangentially, one or more of the girls who lived there, and therefore knew the interior layout of the unusual structure, with its unevenly tiered floors and awkwardly placed wrapping stairwells. The 2 survivors, Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, were being taken good care of by Fry's detectives. They were
Here we go. Listen to this. Ready?
The students often gave out the code to. So while there was no sign of forced entry, that fact had little weight. The killer could have been a previous visitor to the house, a partygoer who knew, even tangentially, one or more of the girls who lived there, and therefore knew the interior layout of the unusual structure, with its unevenly tiered floors and awkwardly placed wrapping stairwells. The 2 survivors, Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, were being taken good care of by Fry's detectives. They were cooperating, but Fry would have to keep what they'd been saying under wraps. One of them had seen the killer, but she could not positively identify him. If the media got hold of that before the police found him, the perp might spook. The crime scene at any quadruple homicide was likely to be complex, but the unusual layout at 1122 King Road and the party-throwing habits of its tenants made things that much more difficult for Fry's crime scene analysts. There might have been hundreds of sources of DNA, fingerprints, clothing fibers, or other trace evidence accumulated over the past several months. Narrowing all that down to a suspect was going to take time and resources the 37-member Moscow PD simply didn't have. Chief Fry brought in the Idaho State Police immediately, and then the FBI, with a team of skilled analysts and criminal profilers who might be helpful. Moscow would continue to hold the reins on the investigation, and Fry would need somebody to be his direct report in charge of that. He knew that Corporal Brett Payne was his guy. Payne was practically a rookie, but whip-smart and able to work behind the scenes, while Fry handled management of the various out-of-town teams collaborating under his lead, and handled the media too. Small towns didn't usually hold press conferences to update citizens on their casework, but Fry was savvy enough to understand that controlling the King Road narrative was probably better than letting the media run amok. In a city conference room, with lights flashing in his face and live cameras rolling, Fry told the press whatever he felt he was legally allowed to tell them during an active investigation, which often wasn't much. It wouldn't be long before the Daily Mail reported Moscow Police Department Chief James Fry gave a blundering press conference Sunday in which he repeatedly could not answer basic questions about the crime. News Nation jumped onto the dog pile right away. It didn't matter to the press that no thoughtful police department in the world would provide detailed information about their investigative progress 1 week into a high-profile hunt for a murderer. The headlines sold, and they sold Chief Fry down the river, while the harsh global spotlight illuminated his town and the people he'd been serving with for almost 3 decades. Chapter 9.
If this isn't written from the love and intel of a police officer, you're crazy. Okay? Mr. J. Reuben Appleman, I have a question for you, Mr. J. Reuben Appleman. Get this on over to him. And this is my question. Ready? Ready? Here it is. J. Reuben Appleman, I would like you to tell all the viewers.
With her own words, not words that were like shoved in her mouth, you know. So, okay, so before we dive into what I'm referring to about the feds screwing or attempting to screw Dylan, and give you a brief background as to who I am. So my girlfriend is in Dylan's inner circle. And by inner circle, I mean inner circle. Like they've hung out almost every day since the incident occurred. And I've seen her a plethora of times as well. So you're going to notice I'm not going to use words like allegedly, supposedly, because all of this is actual first-hand factual information. Where should I start to clear things up? First of all, there's a lot of misconception about Dylan suffering from PTSD or trauma or any of that. None of that is accurate. In fact, when we try to console Dylan after the incident, she's the one that was laughing at me and my girlfriend and I, talking about we're so weird when we tried to give her a hug and stuff. So she's still the same old Dylan. She's had a rough life growing up. She's been through a lot. She doesn't have PTSD and didn't suffer any trauma. The incident that night, and what I'm referring to with the Fed actually put a lot of words into her mouth that she didn't say herself first. So there was a lot of leading statements that they were insinuating to her. And she was really scared the first few days, obviously, after the incident occurred. So, like, the reason none of it makes sense in the affidavit is because it didn't really happen that way. So she never stood there shocked when she saw the individual. She was just standing in her doorway, like, you know, like anybody who opens the door. It was just, you know, she opened the door and yelled at Ethan and Xana and who she thought was their friend. She yelled at them to be quiet. That's what was going on with that situation. And she just went back into the room. She locked the door like usual. And, you know, went to sleep. Everything was quiet after she yelled at them, so she didn't think anything of it. For everyone who's creating these random stories about her being shocked or traumatized, she didn't realize anything was going on. And might sound crazy, might sound dumb, but she really had no clue anything was going on. They were being a little loud, so she yelled at them to be quiet. And that's it. She locked her door and she just went back to her room. And she didn't want to be nosy or anything. So, she was kind of new to that house, so she didn't want to be nosy and, get all up in their business, especially at, in the middle of the night or early morning. So it's as simple as that. Everyone trying to blow that whole situation into something that's not. So yeah, that's that. And she didn't actually get a real good look at Brian. At the time, she assumed it was one of Xana and Ethan's friend who was just getting ready to leave, who was walking out. She didn't get that good of a look. The feds were really...
So Xana and Ethan's friends are normally in ski masks? Or did she truly never see his front of his face? Did she never really see anything? Like she says, I don't remember anything. I don't remember anything. Now, one last voice that we're going to listen to. And I'm going to wait till I get my hard copy in. I'm going to Xerox some copies for you. And I'm going to put some stuff out on my community page. But real quick.
And now I've got to get,
Objection to the admission of that for today's hearing.
Judge, I should have started out by saying that the same stipulation regarding the admission of all exhibits applies today.
We do need the formality of moving for the admission, however. So that's why.
I can do that. Do you want me to do that per exhibit?
Well, it makes, as you're talking about them, it probably makes sense.
Okay, I've got to get myself. Yes. Okay, Detective Payne, can you look at page 5?
Yes, ma'am.
On page 5, can you read what it says in the at the very end of the page in the sentence above wherefore that begins with the paragraph? It begins in support. Can you read that paragraph?
Certainly. In support of the assertion as to the existence of probable cause, the following facts are offered based upon personal knowledge of affiant. See attached statement of Brett Payne, which is marked Exhibit A and incorporated as though fully set forth herein.
And is that
And incorporated as though fully set forth herein. Support of the assertion as to the existence of probable cause, the following facts are offered based upon personal knowledge of affiant. See attached statement of Brett Payne, which is marked Exhibit A and incorporated as though fully set forth herein.
And is that S1 the affidavit in support of the search warrant?
Yes, it is.
And that's the AT&T 1 search warrant that was the first state's
Who?
I am seeking the admission of S2. Just to be clear, Judge, all of these, do you see that same language in this warrant in where you incorporate the affidavit, incorporate Exhibit A into your, you see that language
Ma'am.
in S2? And is S2 the actual search warrant for AT&T?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Can you turn to the last page on page 4? What time was the warrant served?
10:03 a.m.
Do you recall that the return on that warrant came in at 3:30 that day?
That would sound correct. I don't remember specifically.
Would it help if I showed you the AT&T Mobility Propriety front page to verify?
Yes, ma'am.
Judge, I'm not seeking the admission of this.
Okay. And then does anybody have any videos where Brent Kopacka is speaking? Does anybody have any Brent Kopacka? Thank you, WB. And to answer the question from when the video was, so the thing that's very interesting is when the video, it's when the YouTube channel was made. The YouTube channel was made during the arrest, and it was being made out of the Poconos allegedly. And I don't believe it's Payne's voice at all. But I wanted to slow it down for the purposes of he peaks too much in his with when he says stuff. pain. But I'll tell you what, if I'm Ann Taylor, I want to know who made this video, because this person is claiming, I mean, it's hearsay. It's definitely hearsay. But what's compelling about the video is not what he is alleging. It is when this person made the channel. That's what you need to ask. It's when this person made the channel. This person made the channel. You guys, this is fucking crazy when this channel was made. Okay? This channel was made while Brian Cover, nobody knew it. Nobody's supposed to know it, but very select few people. And this Mount Pocono, PA, USA, Friday, December 30th, during the time frame of Brian getting arrested, or first of all, the SWAT team coming in, and then Brian being charged with the murders at 4 a.m. Now, what is also just, we have to find out if it's a YouTube glitch, okay? But the other thing about this channel is that the views don't match up. There's only supposed to be one video on the YouTube channel, and the total number of views is less than the video got. Very strange. Very, very strange. So this is, I believe, somebody that is friends with Dylan. I believe that they know Dylan. I believe that January 13th, 2023, they knew things that would eventually come out in 2025. But the biggest thing is when Dylan Mortensen was given the pictures of Brian Koberger, which by all accounts is very problematic for the prosecution. Why Dylan and Taylor needs to get her hands on. It seems as if Dylan was shown pictures on 11/17 or 12/1, and if it was 11/17, I mean, this person comes out and says this, like, that just after a couple of days, the feds are the ones that are putting this picture in front of Dylan. Absolutely fucking crazy. Anyways, I'm gonna call it a night. God. Hoo-wee. It's gonna get interesting. Lana on Social Blades, all his videos got almost exactly the same views, 52,100 to 52,100. He only had one video. How I know that this channel only has one video ever is from this information. You just go to the channel, which is called Predator Prey, and you go to it, and when you go to the actual information of the channel, it says the total number of views, and also it only has one video. And I know from YouTube dealings that, hold on, let me show you. Right here, even if you were to delete a video or take a video down, your number, see this? If he had other videos, it would say 3, even if you just had one that was right there. And this channel, the views of 52,144 views is not enough compared to the actual video that's there. It has 53,000 some change. That's worth an email to YouTube and ask them how that's possible. So I don't know how that's possible that the video itself could have more views than your channel could have. Unless it was, I don't even know. I want to know if possibly it could have been on a different channel and then you upload it to this channel after it would have had already some views on a different channel. But something's up with that. So again, for those of you guys that don't understand what I'm saying, last time is that the total, so it says joined December 30th, 2022. And it was during the time of the arrest, the break-in, the SWAT, everything. And then this is set to the Mount Pocono in the United States, Pennsylvania. And then this is the only video that surfaces on it. And problem is that the video, this is like the total views is 52,144 views. The problem with that is that when you actually go to then this actual channel here and you click on.
Went to sleep. Everything was quiet after she yelled at them.
Okay, listen right there. After she yelled at them, it was quiet when she went to sleep. That's another contradiction of like the dog barking for 35 minutes straight. Okay. So basically with that, I mean, the prosecution is royally fucked. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. This problems. But right here, this video, 52,331. 52,331. Now when you go here, $52,144. This number cannot be less than, like, that's just absurd. It should be the same number as the video. It's
went to sleep. Everything was quiet after she yelled at them, so she didn't think anything of it. For everyone who's creating these random stories about her being shocked or traumatized, she didn't realize anything was going on. And might sound crazy, might sound dumb, but she really had no clue anything was going on.
52. 52,144. It's less. And then see how it only says one video? It's only ever uploaded one video. Even if it would have had one up there and deleted it, it's still going to count as that video. So problems. This is a hell of problems. Hell of problems. I promise you that it is not Daniel it's not Drunk Turkey at all. And it's just the person who made the video, the person who made the channel, rather. That's the big thing. The person who made the channel, the creator of this channel, whoever made this channel, made it during a time period where only a select few individuals knew that Brian Kohberger was being arrested, okay? And that he lived with, or that he was at his parents' house outside the Poconos in Pennsylvania. Only a select few people knew that. And then the video that would come 13 or 14 days after is the video saying, holy fucking shit, I can't believe the feds, did this. Now, when we go back and we listen to it and hear that Dylan was showed pictures of Brian Kober just days after, it is now significant to hear that, because the testimony of Brett Payne, we didn't even know Brian's name until December 19th. Okay? The feds showed her the pictures, though. $11.17 would be before they even had the STR profile. And 12.1, that would be right after WSU was fucking around over there on campus by his car. Again, all with the feds, if you ask my opinion, because WSU just, oh, wait, they didn't give that tip to Moscow? Get the fuck out of here, man. Come on now. Anyways. But what's going to be hard for anybody to like say, yeah, that's really what was happening, is if the feds were there to help Moscow Police Department, then what are the feds doing and not telling Moscow Police Department about? It's when you don't trust them. They don't trust them. Moscow Police Department was not trustworthy. The feds didn't trust Moscow Police Department. It's that simple. They didn't trust them. They're having WSU do shit. Don't tell Moscow Police Department about it. They couldn't be trusted. People couldn't be trusted. Have a good night, guys. Sleep tight. Thank you guys for joining. Thumbs it up. Share it. This gonna get wild. Hopefully Ann Taylor's doing her due diligence and watching Truth and Transparency. Peace out.